little computer voice said recording in progress. So I will go ahead and get things kicked off today. For those that don't know me, my name is Corey Knipe, current president of the ISA St. Louis section. Appreciate you guys dialing in once again for a great presentation today from Bia Henriques. Bia is a PPM at Takeda Pharmaceuticals and an independent consultant. She is an experienced executive with extensive business development and venture due diligence background in companies focused on life sciences, biotech, agriculture, biopharma, and pharma. She has over 12 years of experience in accelerators, incubators, private venture, risk capital, business and product development in areas of conceptualization, IP strategy, product launch, acquisition integration, M&A, and global business growth. Dr. Henriques is an expert in driving exponential changes throughout cross-functional teams, aligning players internally and externally to successfully execute and manage enterprise-wide operations and support the organization's businesses and services. Her proven strong management expertise, leveraging technical background and operational excellence, has made her a well-sought-after subject matter expert and consultant for global organizations, focused on making the world and its food system sustainable and reliable, which is more important than ever. As a consultant, she evaluates business opportunities globally while assisting in de-risking the process of their disruptive technologies, thus helping investors better understand the landscape and streamline their investment decision-making process. Dr. Henriques works with accredited investors to assemble a diversified portfolio of the Midwest's most promising emerging growth opportunities through their own financial advisors. Excuse me. She performs business, financial, and due diligence and analysis of startup, sources deals in agriculture, pharmaceutical, biotech verticals to fill the pipeline for investment, filters potential investment opportunities across all verticals to ensure quality and depth of the management team, scope and viability of the business opportunity, terms of the offering, precedent transactions, and pathway to liquidity. Bia holds a Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering, a Master's of Science in Chemical Engineering, and a PhD in Energy, Environmental, and Chemical Engineering, all from WashU here in St. Louis, and is fluent in 4 languages. With that, other than being a little tongue-tied, sorry about that, Bia, please go ahead and feel free to take it away.
All right, thank you, Corey. Hi, everyone. That was a little bit of actually my forever will be mentor and professor, Bob Hyder from WashU. He helped me put that bio together. So most of that is actually him, making me look real good, but I'm not all of that. A lot of that came from him and his training and I guess since 2003 under him, he took me under his wings and trained me and taught me, and I became his TA. And then taught for him, and then went to work for him, and then took over his position. And to this day, we get together about twice a month. And he is the person I turn to and call when, there's something at work or whatever it is that I need some, a sounding board, besides my dad, who is also on this call, by the way, on this presentation. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. So thank you so much, both of them, for being able to turn me into who I am today. But I just wanted to talk about real quick, and I'm gonna keep it pretty informal and just leave like quite a bit of time at the end for questions, because the beginning of this, I think most people kind of already know. And then the middle of it is like, a little bit to the, I guess, left of the bell curve. And then the end is really to the left of the bell curve. So we're going to start on talking about, okay, now I got to figure out how to move slides, because what I thought was going to move it, it's not. There, I think. Okay, so we're going to talk about first precision ag, which most of you should be familiar with, has been going on since the mid 1980s. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, and then the 3 most important things: the variation, the sensing, and the information flow. Then we'll go into prescription ag, which kind of became a buzzword and then actually a commercial reality around 2017. So mid to late 2010s. And then we're going to talk about a little bit of the what is next, or the next level, which is what we call open system agriculture. And then at the end, I'll just have a little bit of a bite on the global restructuring of the food system. And then I'll open up for questions, and you guys will have plenty of time because I'll go through these pretty quick. So precision ag, what, why, how, where, when. So what we know, it emerged in the mid 1980s with what was happening with an agricultural revolution. We have a kind of information-based farms or agricultural production systems. They are managed not just from, boots on the ground per se, but more of softwares and some data that is now available to farmers and ranchers as well on the livestock side to be able to run their farms. That allows them to a certain extent to be able to apply the right treatment at the right place at the right time. And the purpose behind all of that got that kicked off back in the mid 1980s was this increased awareness of variation in soil and crop conditions. And then also as we move forward in the development of new technologies, new materials, new ways of communications, and new types of sensors. And not just that, but being able to mass produce them at a price point that, can now make that a reality for the farmers. So technologies like the GNSS, the GIS, microcomputers has made that something that was not available before. And then the first thing that happened, of course, had to do with the fertilizers. Everyone, RNS, EPA, the government, coming from top to bottom, all the requirements and the mandates. So that was the first thing that they caught on to, was being able to kind of dictate how much fertilizer they're going to put on what part of the quadrant of their acreage, so that they were not putting any more or any less than what they needed. And then over time, of course, as that worked out well, it evolved to include a lot of where automation truly comes in and instrumentation comes in. The automatic guidance of the ag vehicles on the farm, the machinery, the processes, the being able to do traceability, which right now is huge. The UN came out with a mandate for a global wide form of being able to do supply chain traceability, supply chain sustainability, and transparency. They are all all the companies working on this, all the organizations working on this, all the countries, especially in the EU, working on this, are working off of a blockchain-based way of being able to be transparent, trace from beginning all the way to you at Whole Foods, grabbing your jar of peanut butter or whatever it is. And as well as, being able to make sure that's, the safety of the product is the other thing. And then overall, for the management of these systems at the farm level, and it doesn't really matter how big the farm is or how little the farm is, they all have some sort of software. The difference is the bigger farms will just have more of these different types of softwares from the different brands of the different everything that they have on the farm. They do not talk to each other for the most part. They are not able to integrate with one another, which is for the most part. And the bigger the farm, the more of these you have, which just create chaos. I had a company that we had products for dairy cows and beef cattle. I literally walked into a farm and that was a control room with 2 operators literally overlooking the barn, and they had 6 screens just like walking into a corn to ethanol plant across the river here in St. Louis, in Sauget, Illinois, and walking into their control room. He was watching, the two operators were watching everything that was going on within those 6 monitors. And it was just crazy to not have a, for me, my mind thinking from a control system perspective and automation, a DCS system that could combine all of that into one. So then we going to kind of the main goals from the drivers is really to be able to optimize the resources, increase the profitability and the sustainability of the operations for the farmers so that their margins can be a little bit higher. We can also, in that way, from the fertilizer perspective to begin with, reduce the negative environmental impact. We're also looking at, improving the quality of work, the environment, the safety and health of those workers that are on those farms. And then there's some data that says that by 2005, precision agriculture was on average 68% profitable. By 2020, precision ag was on average 81% profitable. So, going from 68 to 81 is huge, but the other that it doesn't catch, the other 19, is a big part of like what we depend upon for as a food system, to be able to continue to feed the world. This is at a global level. So in precision ag, we have variations in soils and crops. So we have interest in being able to figure out the soil productivity, moisture contents, organic matter, pH, bulk density, nutrients, amount of fertilizer, probiotics, and on and on. There's all sorts of things out there, sensors that you can put it down and take your data. We have remote and proximal sensing technologies. There are pros and cons to both of them. The remote relies on those satellite images. The proximal sensing system, they are ground-based and they are on the farm. And then they depend on a GNSS receiver to be able to receive that data and then send it up to the cloud, where then we run the algorithms and push back down data. The advantage of the remote sensing is that you can capture in one shot all of it, but the proximal soil sensors, you gotta kind of move them around the farm and the acreage. And so then once you do that, then you gotta kind of put all of that back together and produce a map. And the other one already gives you a map, but is not as accurate. So like I said, the remote sensing provides a kind of a poor representation because it's a higher level map. The proximal ones, it's more accurate, but the work that it takes to move that thing around and take the data and then produce the map is not, farmers are not willing to adopt that as much as they are that one screenshot that is at a higher level. Sensors are either electrochemical, optical, or electromagnetic for the most part, like you catch 98% of them right there. And then from a farmer perspective, the crop supplies are the best indicators on how the growing conditions are different, whether it is within a growing season or between growing, one season versus the other. So comparing seasons. So they did it one year, they do it the next year, and trying to look and see if they actually got anything out that was, informative and, increase their triple bottom line, increase their margins from the sensors, whether remote or proximal, they have been using. This is a little bit of the information flow. I try to make all of these like as short as possible, but basically we have a situation where we got planning happens at the beginning, and then choose the applications, whatever it's going to come from, and then we have results, and then we evaluate the results, and then based on that we go back to planning. That's a very typical honestly for any size of farm. how the information flow works and how the decision-making process is made from year to year or even within one harvest year. The only difference is that in a bigger farm, you may have more applications, you may have more planning to do. You're definitely going to end up with a lot more results, which means you're going to have a lot more data analysis and evaluation to be made so that you can plan for the next year. Now, moving on to automation's golden egg right now, which is prescription agriculture. Much like when you go to the doctor and he diagnoses you with one specific thing and you get your prescription, that is exactly what it's being done right now. So usually what happens is the farmer will, he has the acreage, will section that off into quadrants, and then we'll monitor each quadrant to see how it's doing with respects to all of those other variables that we saw earlier: moisture, pH, organic content, nutrients, probiotics, fertilizer, and so on and so forth. And then as per the quadrant, be able to apply or not apply if it's not needed, whatever it is that the system is telling you to do. So this type of going from the precision to the prescription agriculture, again, started to happen mid to late 2010s. So I'd say like 2016 to 2017. And again, it was due to recent technological advances where we were able to simplify the design, cut down the cost, and then make the deployment of these systems in such a way that was much more widely adopted by the farmer. Even those farmers that are still the ones that were there 65 years ago and have not passed it down to the next generation, we are even getting those to start to adapt some of this prescription agriculture technologies and systems. The farms where we already have a change in generation, so, the 65-year-old farmer that now has already passed on to their sons or daughters, like I've seen in one farm, there were 3 brothers. One was the CEO, one was the CFO, and one was the COO, and they all got their college degrees and their MBAs. So they were running the farm like it was any other processing plant I've walked into with, Professor Hyder, my mentor. So it was amazing to see. And with the ability of being able to communicate long range and making that a solution that wasn't available for, your precision ag, then you can develop that and power those devices across the field and deploy them without worrying about, how you're going to get the information and then send it up to the cloud to run through the algorithms and analyze the data. Sensor technology, of course, and then of course the IoT platforms are very much making a lot easier to collect, store, and process and visualize the data, but it's still kind of like system by system. So this is not like a base platform that you can just put all of your different systems. So whether it's your John Deere tractor and your fertilizer machine and, the in a dairy cow farm, you'd have the parlor where we're milking the cows and that production of milk. Those are all in different systems. So these are being done on a system by system basis, which is why when we walked into that farm, the guy had 6 different screens because he had 6 different brands of types of technologies and sensors and so on and so forth that they were taking data and analyzing the data and then getting that data analysis back. But they do not communicate to each other, and it's not a collective way of analyzing the data. So we have right now a huge challenge to overcome. The farmers, they're not adopting prescription ag. From the sensor design domain, we need to be able to, from an automation perspective, have in situ measurements that we are not having to move manually across the field. and then being able to, send it automatically to a receiver and then to the cloud. And then we also need to make sure that those sensors are reliable and accurate given the environment that they're in, because they're outside to the weather. So that has been the two biggest challenges on trying to get this off the ground and widely adopted. So we also have the automatic and or remotely calibrated sensors. We need help with that. Farmers need help with that. The big ag companies need help with that, because right now, even if you have it, you got to go out there, take it out, bring it back, or have the, your technician of that brand come in, recalibrate, put it back. And it's just a lot of work. And a lot of farmers are just not, interested in having that much work. And last but not least, the issue of the data sharing. So, farmers that don't want the farmers across the highway, like in Brazil, south of Brazil, one side we have the German farmers, and on the other side, we have the Italian farmers, and literally they will not talk to each other. So one of them, or one side has, a set of technologies that it's working, it's doing great for all of their farms, but they will not talk about it to the other set of farmers. It is this crazy kind of like, I want to protect the data from my farm and whatnot. And it's something that it is a lot harder with the older farmers, a little bit easier with this next generation that's taking over, but it's a huge problem. And then who owns that data? So that's the other thing. Does the farmer own the data, or does Climate Corp with FieldView, owns the data? So that is the other big kind of discussion that has been going on, that, we have gone around in circles and circles and no solution. So in a way, what we need to do is just take all of that data, correlate it from all of those systems in one simple platform in real time, and then being able to really, in real time, analyze it with whatever machine learning, AI, and being able to push down actionable items to the farmer. The farmer does not want to know what the pH is on the soil. He wants to know what he needs to do with the pH is off, or if it's too dry or too wet, should he irrigate or not? That's what they're trying to do. They don't want to know the moisture content. They just want to know, irrigate this quadrant, don't irrigate this quadrant. That's it. Make it that easy. Like I said before, the data from one sensor in one platform of one brand, it does not communicate with any other sensors of any other platforms, any other brands. It is totally challenging to be able to be an integrator and make them communicate and analyze at that level. And there is no easy way of integrating them all. So right now there's zero. I mean, the opportunity is so huge because there's literally no one, no company, no integrator, or no instrument maker, no data analysis company that can actually integrate the different brands that any farm can have and make it into one DCS. The digital agriculture enablers is what automation should be doing. What automation needs to be looking at and focused on is solving this problem right here. They need to connect the solution providers to the experts, at the farm level, to the researchers at the universities, and the person to companies in need of that knowledge and the innovation and the data, and then being able to leverage that in a way that then, it improves every time they use it. So from harvest to harvest, from season to season, year to year, harvest to harvest, depending where you are, because in some countries we get to harvest, like in Brazil, a year. The system learns more and more and becomes smarter and smarter given machine learning and AI methods. And that's where we want to go. And that is kind of the maximum, like platinum standard or the black credit card kind of level that we want to be at. But right now, we don't have one single in the world company or integrator or whatever that can manage to do this. Not just from the farm perspective, protection of their data, or from the other side, the companies not wanting other companies to get access to, their algorithms or what they're doing and how they're doing it, and so on and so forth. So it's just this big discussion. And again, we just keep going round and round and get nowhere with it. The automation portion of it should really be the enabler of artificial intelligence in prescription ag. Automation should be able to come in, whether it's already with the agnostic platform that can integrate all that the farms have, and then be able to give the farmer in one report what he needs to do and where and when, just like we talked about earlier. But that doesn't exist. It is a huge opportunity that has not been tapped by one single company. I don't care if they are in the family and friends round or a big conglomerate that have been, in the stock market for years and years and years. Monsanto can't do it. Bayer now can't do it. None of the big ag companies can do it. Integrators that I know can't do it. Startups are trying, but they're not there yet. It's just totally untapped, and it is like the cream of the top. If we can get to here, full digital farming capable, get all the inputs from all of the systems that they use, and then as well at the level of global agriculture and global farming, putting that all together and then learning, so that the next year and the next season, we can apply that learning and be more profitable, higher yield per acre, making sure that the quality, safety is all better. The standards, we're above standards. They're created by, NIFA, USDA here in the US, and, each country has their own organizations for that. And that leads us to what we are calling, agriculture version 3.0, which is what's next for automation, which is open systems. So this is hard to read the diagram, so I'll leave it up for a second. I'll just talk about it for a little bit. So the cream of the top, the one thing that we need to get to, if we're truly gonna be able to manage to feed the amount of people that we're gonna have on this planet in 30 years, is to completely restructure our current food system and the way we make food and produce food. And I'm not just talking about your conventional farming. I'm talking about indoor, vertical, hydroponics, all of it. This is going to have to be a multi-solution approach, or we are not going to be able to feed everyone that we need to feed in 30 years. And it will be a major breakdown in the food system, in the supply chain and the value chain. And with that, the sad part is the ones that are going to suffer the most right at first are those countries where that is already a problem. Food is already a scarcity. So those countries are literally going to start to starve themselves. And then it's just going to creep up over time. So if we already kind of, as my current boss says to me all the time, I'm the queen of risk mitigation. So I am very, well, mostly because of my dad and lots of things I learned from him. I'm very keen into safety and kind of looking ahead at risks and then figuring out paths to mitigate those risks if they happen. If they don't, great. But if they do, we have something in place ready to go. Right now, we got nothing in place to feed the amount of people we're going to need to feed in 30 years. So literally, we're going to have people starving to death at those countries where this is already a problem, and then it's going to creep up. And here's where automation can literally come in and, in a way, solve the problem. Now, it's going to take a buyout of all the stakeholders involved, all the big ag companies, buyout from the seed suppliers, the supply chain in the ag, value chain. The farmers themselves, as the stakeholders in this, the end consumers, us going to the grocery store and looking at labels, looking for food safety, traceability, transparency. Okay, this jar of palm oil came from this one palm oil tree in this one city in Indonesia, in latitude, longitude, whatever. I mean, that is specific. That's what the generation that is younger than me and the one younger than those are asking for. It's no longer just a matter of non-GMO and organic and all of that. It's a matter of knowing where your food's coming from. If it is, a fair trade, are those farmers being paid what they deserve? And right now that's not happening, but automation can make that happen. It's just, we got to put the time, the effort, and the amount of time that it's going to take to make that happen. That would be a platform that would be the basis for a new solution for all of the different regions, all of the different crops, machineries, sensors, etc., that you can think of, to bring it all into one and leverage all of that data from a machine learning and AI perspective to provide back actionable items that we can learn from, and then be able to, feed the people that we're going to need to feed in 30 years. So this global restructuring of the food system, we are moving from precision to prescriptive right now, and helping the farmers to know, ahead of time what to expect, and then, have an actionable item that they can do to prevent what's coming. Seeing an increase in quality and yield in profits. We are also being able to address, obvious environmental and health aspects. Less pesticide, less fertilizer, save water, and then, in a way, sustainable foods from all of the solutions I talk about. So not just commercial farming, but indoor hydroponics, your local. So, your container that's growing the greens indoor, just being down the road for the Whole Foods where they're going to deliver it to. So, the carbon footprint also being minimized. So what we call it's an automation-based open system agriculture that enables a complete restructure of the food system at a global level, that allows for that to be traceable, to be safe, to be sustainable, and will be able to protect and feed the world in this long term. That was in the summary that I talked about. We're going to have to really try hard to meet the UN's, increase of 2.5 billion people over the next 30 years on top of what we have. So if this is where, that's the tipping of the scale, that's the tipping point. If we can't make that happen, I am not quite sure. I have serious worries about it, not just because I have my 3 daughters and they will have their kids, and that's in 30 years. And it's really worrisome that we are not there yet. And we don't have even a light at the end of the tunnel at this point that can tell us with just a little bit of, reliability that we would have something like that in place in 30 years to be able to take care of those 2.5 billion more people that we're going to have. So with that said, I just want to point out, I found this, it was a paper, you can't see it, but I'm going to say real quick. It's called Beyond Industrialization, the Prescription Food System. It was written by Thomas Urban in 1998. He was former chairman and CEO of Pioneer Hybrid International Inc. And then he was director of Pioneer Hybrid International and Sigma Ultra Corp here in St. Louis. He is also a trustee at Drake University, and he is chairman of the Carnegie Institution of the National Forum for Ag, as well as the National Research Initiative Competition Grants Program, as a member of the study committee evaluating the USDA grants under that program. So he wrote this article about prescription food systems, prescription agriculture back in 1998. So since this article came out in 98, it took us until about 2016 to 2017 to get to the prescription food system that we're talking about now. So someone was onto something, but I feel like we just get caught up in the just day-to-day, fixing the problems, putting the fires out. But it's really that looking ahead, the risk management, what's going to happen, what could happen, and what do we need to do, and how do we do it so that we can avoid those things. That is the most important. And that global restructuring just needs to happen. We no longer have a choice. So that is something that I have been working on, various companies, various orgs, nonprofits as well, trying to help figure out how to bring all the stakeholders to the table so that, we can play nice and come up with, what it is that's going to sustain us 30 years from now and beyond. So with that, I am done talking. So I'll open the floor. If you guys have any questions, just go ahead. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Corey, thank you so much for that introduction, but you can thank Professor Hyder for that. He wrote most of it.
I do see he is on.
Yeah, he's not saying, he's probably shy because I'm talking about him.
Oh, I don't think we know him to be shy, so I'm sure he'll...
No, that's true. He does speak his mind, which I guess is how, we got connected so much over the years, since I was his student back into, I don't even want to say the year, because then you guys will figure out how old I am, and that's just sad. So, but it has been like a couple decades, almost. We're almost there.
I have a question.
There we go. There's Bob. And for those who also
there he is. I hear the voice.
If you have audio issues, please feel free to use the chat and I'll moderate that as well. So go ahead, Bob.
Have they been able to track the health of the dead zone on the precision fertilizer application? Has there been any indication that we're going to all this spiffy stuff, that the dead zone is going away and we're having a healthy aquatic system down there?
So what we are seeing right now, it's not so much that it's going away, but it's not getting worse. So, with this, so as you know, Professor, I keep calling him Professor, and I'll be doing that this entire time. So it's Bob, but for me, it will just be Professor. So Professor, as you know, when they started instituting these programs and as the farmers adopted, it takes a while, right? And it takes quite a few seasons. It's not going to happen with one harvest in one season for us to see a difference. But what we have seen and what, peer-reviewed articles have shown is that they are not seeing an increase. It's not getting worse. So if nothing else right now, we have gotten to a point where we have managed a stasis kind of, era. So like a period of stasis where we don't see it retracting back, but we are not seeing it getting worse. But it is expected over the next 5 to 10 years that we're going to start to see the reduction over time. So right now we're just not making it worse, which is, a great first step. But in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll hopefully be seeing going the other way, and then eventually back to it being healthy. Does anyone have any more questions?
Hi, this is Mikeloraca. I just have a question out of just general interest. So you talked about this farm you visited, the three brothers. Is that in the United States?
Yep, it was in Michigan.
Michigan? Okay.
Yep, and it was a what we call a dual farm. So they had the the crops, and they had dairy. They had like livestock, but they were not beef. They were dairy cows. So they had the dairy cows side of the farm, and then they were growing 2 different types of crops. They had a control tower in the barn where they controlled everything with respect to the dairy cows and the crop side. And on top of that, they also produced methane on their farm to fuel a lot of their operations. So it was an incredibly like high tech. I walked in there and I had to like stop for a second, take a deep breath, look again, and make sure that what I was seeing was what I was thinking I was seeing, because it was like kind of out there. And it was literally like when we sat down to talk to them about our product, they told us that when their dad told them that he wanted to pass down the farm in X number of years, all 3 of them kind of like laid out their plans for college and then their masters in a way that one could be the CEO, one could be the CFO, and one could be the COO of the farm. And that's what they did. And then when they were done in school, came back, took the farm over, and it's one of the most profitable farms, not just in Michigan, but in the US in general, especially for a dual farm that has dairy and the crop side.
Congratulate on some pretty far thinking, that's all.
Yeah.
Have you run into any others that are approaching their level of sophistication?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of most of the ones that have already made the generation turnover are very quickly doing whatever they need to do to kind of get to that level. The ones that haven't turned over to the new generation yet are the slower adopters. So it's just a typical cycle. The farms that had been already being managed by the newer generation were adopting like crazy very quickly. And then there was the second wave, which is like the middle of the bell curve, where the farms that were in transition then start adopting quickly. And then we're just now getting the last bit that is transitioning from the last generation to kind of like my generation, adopting the same types of technologies.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Is the generational hurdle the biggest thing to overcome in kind of advancing the technologies of farms and adopting, this next level of automation?
That is really kind of automation dependent. So if we're talking about something that generation, so maybe my dad's not on anymore, so I'll just use his generation. So
he's still hiding out down there. Be careful.
Oh, darn it. Okay, well, I said it, so here I go. So like the ones that are still like on my dad's generation, if it's something that it's easy to explain, they can put 2 and 2 together and, okay, I buy this for this much, and I can easily get to what happens to my triple bottom line at the end of the year, then that is a quick turnover. Something that's a little bit more complicated and you take a little bit more to get them from point A to what happens to the triple bottom line aspect, that's a much harder sell. And it was one of the things that at Innovatech, when we were selling into dairy farms and beef cattle farms or ranches, we immediately noticed this. So when we went in with the sales pitch, we had to make it as easy as possible for them to get from point A to what happens to my triple bottom line and by how much. And is it within one season, or do I have to wait for 3 years and 3 seasons and harvests before I see it? So that is the biggest hurdle with them.
So it sounds like everybody's taking more of a, just a business look at, how
Yep.
can I recoup that money? And
Absolutely.
I don't care how to do it, just as long as I can show it on the bottom line.
Right.
Makes
And
sense.
because they are being hit. I mean, just imagine that this market, this vertical, this market sector, it is so fragmented. These farmers get hit probably like multiple times a day with every single little different sensor and, cameras and like automatic sampling, but nothing works together. So at the end of the day, it's like looking at 25 different things and variables and trying to make sense of it all. They don't want that. They're doing that now on paper. So what difference does it make? It's just now putting it on a computer. I mean, we got to go one level above, automation has to be real automation, not just like, oh, I'm going to throw in the sensor and it's going to spit out some data and there you go, farmer. We got to go one level above and really hit it from the automation perspective, really leverage that, information, the IoT and the machine learning algorithms and the AIs, and just push back down, not numbers, but the actionable items, change the feed, add sodium bicarbonate because the pH is too low, too high on, on the inside of the rumen of the dairy cows. So we're not maximizing milk production. I mean, higher yields on any product that you try to sell to a corn farmer has to be 14% and above. If you're not giving them 14% more yield per acre, you're not going to sell them anything. It's a little bit lower for soy, but that's the number for corn. So, incremental automation, zero difference. You might as well just pack and go home and start over. So, I mean, we really need some disruptive, exponential new technologies coming from automation that is compatible, that can talk to each other, and at a farm, like overall holistic level, look at it and then push down those actionable items, just like a DCS does at a corn to ethanol plant. And that is not happening. That's not the direction I've been seeing automation companies doing. It's a lot easier to come out with the greatest next sensor that then again can't talk to anything and just give farmer numbers. That is not enough.
I don't want to steal the follow-up if anybody else has anything out there, but really quick, because I've seen this in the industry that I come from, is there a fight over that data, right? Because, I work for an equipment manufacturer, and when we push out an IIoT device, we try to structure it so we own the data, so we can improve our own components, right? And also, potentially do other things with that data down the line that we probably haven't even thought of as revenue streams. So is that the disconnect as to where you see the vision of things going versus where it's at today, or?
Well, that's where we're at today. It's everyone's trying to protect their data, or, behind the wall of the data in a way, to be honest, because that's how you get to the data. If you're going to integrate and be able to have the systems communicate, that the companies don't want to do. And on top of that, you have farmers that don't adopt the technology because they don't want the company to have his data, because he thinks that he plants in a way that is different from the guy right across the street, getting the same yield per acre on the corn that he's getting, but God forbid his data gets leaked out and now his neighbor across the road knows his data. It is absolutely insane. It's much better with the younger generations, but like my dad's generation, I mean, that's how they are. So it's this fight, I don't even know, like greed for the data that is stopping us from being able to make the disruptive and exponential technologies and changes that we need to make to, feed the world in 30 years from now. Because all of this, protect my data, use my data for the future. This is a multi-solution approach. Like your equipment, machine making company is not going to solve the world's hunger problem 30 years from now if we don't start working together. And again, it's not just conventional agriculture. We're working with hydroponics, vertical farming, indoor farming. I mean, just look at the cannabis market. I mean, those guys, just look at them as a role model. Those guys have increased yield like crazy. They have systems, they're totally integrated. Their margins are off the charts, well, for multiple reasons. But the point is, it's like they don't have this greed for the data and who owns it and no one can see it. I mean, they share because the more they make, the more they make. It won't matter. There will always be people buying what a farmer is producing, no matter what type of farming or what a cannabis farming is producing. So I honestly do not understand this whole greed for holding the data hostage or not allowing systems they're not from the same company to talk to each other, because that is not solving the problem at all. That is not even an incremental, advance. So that for me is the really hard part when I go in and talk to companies and they, bring me in to consult. They want to hear one thing, but my story is very different from what they want to hear. So, and that is the hard conversation we have to have. And the come to Jesus meeting where it's like, okay, I hear you, but if you continue down this track, this is what is going to happen. And eventually, this is physically to the world what is going to happen to us that will be alive in 30 years and then born from there on. And that is not good enough. For me, it's not good enough. You can ask Professor. Professor always told me, Bia, sometimes you just got to give 90%. You can be 200% all the time. I'm 200% all the time, or I'm at sleep. Because I cannot watch the world go down in 30 years.
A couple comments along those lines. I mean, you had the same problem in the world of medicine. I mean, obviously there are many medical discoveries, many things that could improve health of people in the world, which never make it to market simply because the right people aren't making the money. That's just the way the world operates. One of my other comments I was going to make is you were talking about adoption. What kind of capital investment is this? I mean, for one, a lot of farmers are working on very thin profit margins. And they also often don't have a whole lot of cash and capital to invest. So, is that a impediment to kind of rolling this out, or are the gains in yields so fantastic that people can easily say, oh yeah, it's well worth the capital investment?
So let me see if I understood the question. So the last part that you said, if you can easily show that the yield for example, for corn is, it's increasing it by 12 to 14% more than they're getting now, that's an easy sell. Okay. If you are not, and that's where there lies within the problem of the capital expense, because as we become, this greed for my data, for my sensor, for my, algorithms that I'm running the data from my sensors from, and then pushing down the solution or the recommendation, the actionable item to the farmer. When we stop doing that and democratize agriculture and just let people do what they need to do in an open system where we leverage, not just like, someone would be leveraging off of yours, but you would also be able to leverage and learn from the other. And then we start doing this at a global level. And then we start doing this not with just conventional agriculture, but going with, the other three, the hydroponics, the indoor, the vertical farming, then we really have a chance, a true chance at being able to meet what we need to meet in 30 years. So the minute we stop doing what we're doing right now, just because we're going to start being able to leverage off of each other, that capex that it is now, that, a lot of farmers can't afford, if it's not giving them that yield, or just because, their margins are so thin, or they don't have the cash, the price is going to go down. It's supply and demand. It's the same as any other, I guess, in a way, like in healthcare. Once we know why they're keeping the lids on it. They are filling up the pipeline. And the minute they're ready to go to market with it, we're going to see federal-wide, adoption of alternative medicine. But those companies are not there yet. They are not ready yet. They're working. The R&D is working. The pipeline is filling it up. When it's full and ready to go, we'll all be like Illinois, Colorado, California. I mean, it is not going to matter. They're just holding everyone hostage right now because they want to be a player too. And right now the players are the little players because they can be in just one state and survive, right? The ones where it's legal. It's the same thing that's happening here, but just in a different way. The minute we are able to leverage from each other and share that knowledge, and like I said, holistically look at it, that capex will come down. You still make your margins. The farmer will be better off. His margins will be higher. He'll be more profitable. He'll be buying your stuff and other people's stuff. But for now, it's just, we call it in Portuguese, gato pingado, one cat at a time, literally. It's like going and you sell and you sell. And you talk to the guy so many times until he basically relentlessly give up and buys your sensor because you won't quit talking to him. I mean, that should not be the case.
All right, we've got time for, I think, maybe one quick one. If anybody has another question, I did see Bob dropped a comment in the chat about sharing this with the ISA at the society level, so the international level. I don't know if you're comfortable with that. I'm more than happy to share this presentation with them if you're interested in having other discussions like this across the country, potentially across the globe. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's because it's very different. The look that I gave here is more from a US, maybe Mexico kind of perspective, but you start looking, let's call it south of the border. I'm Brazilian, so I'm okay to say that. And then you look at the EU, and even not just at the EU level, but at the European countries level, like France, for example, where, you can no longer use any sort of artificial flavoring, color, whatever. Everything has to be natural. That is a country mandate in France. So what did they do? They did what they had to do to comply with what was mandate from top to bottom, so they could continue to sell and continue to make profit. And guess what? Us at the grocery store in France, we don't have a choice. We're going to pay what the thing is, a jar of jam or whatever it is, a cheese costs, because they are not using artificial anything. It is completely prohibited in all of France. So, it's that kind of stuff that will then start happening, because otherwise we literally will starve. So you're going to see this top to bottom mandates coming down. FDA, USDA. They're going to start coming down with, things that you can or cannot do, or that you have to be below or above certain thresholds, so that we can manage this problem. So every country is different. And that's why having this open system that can be globally adopted is huge, because then you can really learn
from each other in the different countries and the different regions, and then use all of that into an AI algorithm that then just literally tells you what you need to do exactly when and why. And it's now very cheap because it's just mass scale, and it gives you your profits, and the farmer makes profits, and I don't starve, and my kids don't starve.
We're getting a lot of kudos in the chat here, Bia, and a lot of that speaks to me too. Thinking about having become a father a couple of years ago, I've been way more in tune with all of this and how it's going to play out through my kids' lives, right? Like we've been so fortunate growing up in the time that we did, that everything was abundant for us. In my family, it was no issues getting food of whatever we wanted. Still see that today, but then seeing some of the supply chain issues of the last, year and a half, especially, it's like, oh, wait, we got to pay much closer attention to this. So thank you so much for a great presentation. It was very thought-provoking and kind of inspirational too. So appreciate that.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, I told Professor when he brought it up, I was like, well, you're getting a Brazilian to talk about this to an international society. Are you sure about this? Because this is what you're gonna get, I am very much like that. What you see is what you get, and I'm in your face, and I'll tell you what I think. I think a professor rubbed off on me a little bit, just from that perspective.
We could see the influence. And then just one quick thing of housekeeping before we go ahead and shut it down for today. Once again, thank you so much, Bia. We really do appreciate it. We hope you come back again in the future. Our next presentation is from Mary Beth Ramey of DuPont. It's on HMIs and best practices in using human-machine interface. It's going to be on the 16th of March at 4 p.m. This is a time change, so if you've signed up for it previously, please be aware of that. We've moved that to 4 p.m. because we're going to team up with the Toledo and Columbus sections, so Mary Beth doesn't have to give the same presentation 3 times in 2 days. But once again, thank you so much, Bia. Hope to see you again
Anytime.
at a future meeting, and thanks everybody for dialing in today.
And thank you all for listening.
And I am from my generation, but I am not that bad, so just to make the point.
That is my dad, for those of you that did not catch that at the beginning. So I have my professor of almost 20 years and my dad on this call. So, I must be doing something right. I don't know. So here we go.
I'd say the check's in the mail, right? That's usually what I'd say.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to get back to this place behind me at some point soon, because it is way too cold today out here.
All right. Well, take care, everybody. Thanks again. And we'll see everyone next time.